It was 05:30 in the desert when I heard the diesel growl behind my house. Not mine, somebody else's. By the time I made the corner of my driveway, an unmarked flatbed had my Ford F250 hooked, my kayak cracked in half on the concrete, and a blonde woman in white capris was filming on her phone like she'd just won the lottery. She turned, smiling.
Hi, neighbor. You can't park commercial vehicles in Saguaro Ridge. HOA voted.
Then she said the line she would regret for the rest of her life.
You're lucky my husband isn't here. He's a major in the Air Force. He knows people.
I let her talk. I let her smile. Because in 9 hours I was going to be standing on a flight line, taking command of the base where her husband worked, and I had been recording every second. 2 weeks before that tow truck showed up, I rolled into Saguaro Ridge with a moving van, a borrowed dolly, and a 14-year-old daughter who had not spoken 3 full sentences to me in 6 months. Hattie sat in the passenger seat, with her earbuds in, watching the saguaros slip past, jaw set the way her mother used to set hers. The street smelled like creosote after the morning sprinklers, that wet dust scent that means desert and home if you grew up out here. I grew up out here. My name is Ethan Marsh, 47, United States Air Force, 2 weeks out from pinning on full bird and stepping into command of the 355th Wing at Davis-Monthan, an installation full of A-10 warthogs and the people who keep them flying. 2 years out from burying my wife. 18 months out from learning my daughter would rather slam a door than say goodnight. I'd taken the assignment because Tucson was where Mara and I had been stationed when Hattie was born. I wanted my kid to remember a place where the 3 of us had been a family before the cancer ate the middle out of us. The neighborhood was a master-planned thing with stucco arches, fake adobe, and HOA bylaws thicker than a base regs binder. The realtor swore the rules were lifestyle, not law. I should have laughed in his face. I drive a 2015 Ford F250, dust-colored, a man's truck, the kind you use because it works. I keep an aluminum toolbox in the bed and a black tarp folded behind the seat. In the garage, I had 2 Honda XR 250s I was rebuilding. Slow, careful work I'd started after the funeral because my hands needed something my brain couldn't sabotage. Hattie sometimes stood in the doorway and watched. She never said anything, but she stood there. Mara had been the one who told me to buy that first XR 250, 20 months before she got sick. She'd handed me the Craigslist printout one Sunday morning, with 3 exclamation points in red pen above the asking price. "You're going to need a hobby when I'm old," she'd said. She had not used the word gone. She had used the word old. That was the gift she gave me on a Sunday morning over coffee, and I'd been spending the last 2 years trying to make my hands deserve it. The first note showed up the second night, white paper, bright pink Sharpie, taped to my windshield. Welcome to Saguaro Ridge. Please relocate your commercial-style vehicle to the garage by 7 a.m. tomorrow. Architectural and Compliance Committee. It wasn't signed by a person. It was signed by a committee, which is how cowards sign things. I parked the truck in the same spot the next morning and went to my temporary office on base. By dinner, there was a second note, stapled to the first, same Sharpie. Final warning. Vehicle violates Section 6.3.b. Fine pending. C. Whitaker, Chair. The signature finally had a name. Charlene Whitaker. Mid-40s, blonde down to her elbows, white SUV, white teeth, and the kind of laugh you could hear from 2 cul-de-sacs over. I'd already met her, briefly, the day we moved in. She'd swung by with a foil-covered banana bread and a long sideways look at my truck, my tarp, my aluminum toolbox. She'd asked what I did for a living. I told her I worked on the base. She'd nodded the way people nod when they hear Walmart. I didn't answer the note. I didn't drive my truck into the garage. I didn't move it an inch. Hattie watched me from the kitchen window the next morning, drinking orange juice, eyebrows up. "Are you in trouble?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. She almost smiled. First time in 3 weeks. I should have known then. A woman like Charlene Whitaker does not stop at a note. She doesn't even stop at a fine. She stops at the moment somebody she's afraid of looks her in the eye, and not a second sooner. But I wasn't going to give her that moment. Not yet. I was going to give her enough rope to braid the whole HOA into a noose. So I started recording. The third note didn't come on paper. It came on Tuesday morning, 8:45, as a hand-delivered envelope with a wax paper feel and the words HOA Official Correspondence stamped across the front in gold foil. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee gone cold and read the formal version of Charlene's pink Sharpie. A $250 per day fine. Effective, retroactive to my first sunrise in the neighborhood. Violation, Section 6.3.b, commercial-style vehicle stored on residential driveway. Violation, Section 6.3.c, storage of inoperable mechanical equipment in garage visible from street. The second one made me laugh out loud. My garage door had been closed every minute I owned the house. The only way Charlene Whitaker had eyes on my motorcycles was if she had walked up my driveway, hands on the glass, and peeked through the side window. She had. The Ring camera I'd installed the day after the first note had her at 7-Eleven on Sunday, cupping her hands around her face like a kid at a candy store, breath fogging the glass beside my front door. I exported the clip into a folder labeled Marsh/Saguaro Ridge/Evidence and saved it 3 places. Hattie watched me name the folder from the kitchen island. "Dad," she said carefully, "are we going to court?" "We're going to write things down," I said. "That's it for now." She nodded the way she used to nod when she was 8, considering whether she trusted the answer. Then she dropped her granola bowl in the sink and said, "I can help." That was a sentence, a full one, addressed to me, with intent. I almost saluted it. By Thursday, Charlene had called Tucson code enforcement on my house personally. Their inspector, a wiry man named Padilla with a sun-cooked neck and a clipboard that had seen 40,000 front yards, stood at the bottom of my driveway and looked at me with the patient face of a man whose patience has been used up by people exactly like Charlene. He glanced at my truck. He glanced at the F250's bumper sticker, saw it was clean, no commercial signage, and asked to see the motorcycles. I pulled the garage door open. 2 XR250s in primer, both with current Arizona titles in a folder I handed him. He smiled and made one note. "No violation, Mr. Marsh." He tapped his pen against his clipboard. "Sir, off the record, you're the 4th complaint from this address this quarter. The previous 3 were a chief master sergeant down the block, a tech sergeant with a tire on his patio, and a young staff sergeant's wife who hung an American flag the wrong width. All cleared, all her." I asked him if he'd put that pattern in writing. He smiled wider. "I already did. It's a public record." The truth hit me the way good truths do, quietly, like a clean tool finding its right slot. In Arizona, anyone can request the file behind a code complaint, the address, the date, the complainant's name. Public records aren't just for lawyers. They're for any neighbor with a stamp and a Tuesday afternoon. That night, I drove to the Pima County Recorder's office before it closed, paid $11, and walked out with a printed certified copy of every recorded document tied to Saguaro Ridge. The original CC and Rs, the bylaws, the amendments, the board minutes the HOA had filed. 8 pounds of paper. I cleared the kitchen table. Hattie sat across from me with 2 yellow highlighters and a stack of sticky tabs. She read out section numbers like a kid spelling words for a beat. 6.3.b, commercial style, she said. It says commercial style, but the definition is in Appendix A. Appendix A says, displaying business signage, livery, or commercial logos. I looked over her shoulder. The truck had a small American flag decal on the back window, nothing else. She kept going. Section 6.3.f. Listen to this. Personal hobby restoration vehicles owned by residents are explicitly permitted on driveways, provided they are operable, currently registered, and not for sale or commercial service. She looked up. "Dad, the rule she's writing you up for says you're allowed." Outside, a coyote yipped twice. A sprinkler turned on 3 houses down with a small mechanical sigh. The dryer beeped. I sat back and let it settle. Charlene Whitaker had not just bent a rule, she had invented one, and she had been doing it for a while. The welcome committee never welcomed us. That's the line Hattie used on a Saturday at the community pool when a girl her age, 12 maybe, looked her up and down by the diving board and said her mother said the new people had brought trash trucks into the cul-de-sac. Hattie smiled the way her mother had taught her to smile at people who weren't worth correcting, walked over to her towel, walked home dripping chlorine, and didn't go back to the pool for 2 weeks. She didn't cry, she made a list. On a yellow legal pad she stole from my office, she wrote down every kid who'd said something, every parent who'd looked away, every mom on the cul-de-sac who'd suddenly become very interested in her phone whenever we walked the dog. She titled the list, Witnesses. I asked where she'd learned that word. She shrugged. Law and Order. Mom and I used to watch it. I read the list twice and didn't tell her how proud I was. Pride is a thing you store up. It compounds. By the second week, Charlene had moved past notes and code enforcement and into the soft warfare of suburban America, the kind that doesn't leave fingerprints but bruises everything underneath. Our mailbox started getting flyers stuck inside the door instead of inside the box. Our garbage cans got wheeled 6 feet down the curb on collection mornings. The neighborhood Facebook group, the one I'd been politely added to and quietly ignored, became a slow-motion smear. New owner at 4218, letting the property go downhill. Restoration vehicles in a residential neighborhood. This is exactly what 6.3.b was written to prevent. Children should not have to walk past commercial activity. I screenshotted every post. I downloaded the PDF of every comment thread. I cross-referenced the worst commenters against the HOA roster. 3 of the 4 sat on Charlene's committee. Then came the post that changed it. Charlene herself, Friday at 8:47 p.m. in the official Saguaro Ridge group, with a photograph of my driveway shot at an angle she could only have gotten by walking onto my lawn. For the longtime families of Saguaro Ridge, we have welcomed people of all backgrounds for 32 years, but we cannot accept a deliberate degradation of community standards. Some of you may remember in 2022, we addressed a similar situation with a family who refused to bring their property into compliance. They eventually relocated, and the neighborhood thrived. Let's not be afraid to have the same conversation again. I read it 3 times. I read it a 4th. A similar situation, a family who refused, who eventually relocated. I called the school carpool line at 7:30 the next morning and got a name I'd been circling for 2 days. Senior Master Sergeant Tanya Bell. Black, single mother, 3 kids, transferred out of the neighborhood 18 months ago after, in her words, Mrs. Whitaker decided my front yard solar lantern violated the spirit of the community. She'd taken a loss on the sale. I asked her if I could quote her. She laughed without humor and said, "You can put my name on the front page of the Star, Colonel. I have been waiting for somebody to put her name on something." That same morning, Padilla the code inspector called my cell. He'd remembered another piece of his pattern. 12 months ago, a Vietnamese-American family on Mesquite Lane had been issued 19 separate complaints over a koi pond before they sold. 19. The koi went to a community college's biology department. The complaints went into a folder somewhere. I sat at the kitchen table, with my coffee cooling and my hands very still, and felt the calm that comes when a man finally sees the actual shape of what he is up against. The Fair Housing Act is 46 pages of federal law, written by people who watched neighborhoods do exactly what Charlene Whitaker had been doing. It applies to HOAs. It covers race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, disability. It carries real teeth, civil penalties, attorney's fees, federal investigation. If you can show a pattern of targeted enforcement, you don't need a smoking gun, you need a smoking ledger. The lesson was small and clean. An HOA can sit on top of every freedom you have, unless you have written proof of who they target, when, and why. Patterns are the proof. Save everything. Hattie came home from school that afternoon, dropped her backpack, and asked if she could help me build a spreadsheet. I told her she could pick the columns. The sticker happened on a Thursday. I came home at 5:42 p.m., with Hattie in the passenger seat, a bag of groceries between her feet, and a takeout pizza balanced on her lap. The cul-de-sac was the kind of quiet that's only quiet because everyone is watching from behind curtains. There was a black Ram pickup parked nose to nose with my F250, blocking my driveway. The Ram had a magnetic sign on the door reading, AZ Compliance Solutions, a company I'd never heard of and had not invited. 2 men in tan polo shirts and reflective vests were standing on my property. The shorter one was holding a clipboard. The taller one was holding what looked, from 40 feet away, like an oversized roll of orange masking tape. Charlene Whitaker was standing on my lawn between them, in white pants and a pink linen blazer, smiling at her phone. I parked at the curb. I turned to Hattie. I said, "Stay in the truck. Roll the windows down. Push record." She nodded once, deadly serious, and tapped her phone. I walked up onto my lawn, carrying nothing but a calm I'd built across 26 years of dealing with people who thought volume equaled authority. The taller man had already slapped an orange decal across the driver's side window of my F250. It said, "Violation. Remove within 24 hours. A Z-Compliance Solutions," in shouty block letters. He was peeling a second one for the windshield as I walked up. "Gentlemen," I said, "stop." The shorter one looked at Charlene. Charlene didn't look up from her phone. "Stop," I said again, in the voice you use when you have stopped a flight line and you do not need to repeat yourself. Both men stopped. "You're on my property," I said. "You haven't shown me a warrant, a court order, or a license. You haven't presented a state-issued tow contractor permit. You are not law enforcement. Step off the lawn." The taller one peeled his hand off the second decal, slowly, like it had become very hot. The shorter one cleared his throat. Charlene finally looked up. "They are authorized agents of the Saguaro Ridge Homeowners Association," she said sweetly. "Section 9.1 of the bylaws gives the Architectural Committee authority to engage compliance contractors." "Section 9.1 of your bylaws," I said, "gives the board, not the committee, authority to engage compliance contractors, and only under board-approved budget line items, and only contractors licensed and bonded by the Arizona Registrar of Contractors and the Department of Public Safety for any vehicle handling. May I see the license, please?" The shorter contractor looked at his clipboard like the answer might be on page 2. It was not. "Charlene," he said quietly, "we should—" "Show me your contractor's license," I said. "Show me your bond number. Show me the board resolution authorizing your engagement, or step off this property and remove every decal you have applied without authority." Charlene's smile thinned into something dangerous. "Mr. Marsh," she said, lifting her chin, "we were warned you might try something like this. The board has been informed. You are about to find out that this neighborhood does not protect men who think they are above their neighbors." I let that one sit. I let the silence do the work. I let her hear her own sentence bounce back to her from the eaves of the houses around us. 3 different curtains twitched. Hattie, from the truck, in a clear, loud teenage voice, "Dad, I got that on video." The taller contractor cracked first. He pulled the second decal back into its roll, peeled the first decal off the F250 with a slow, sticky sound, looked at his partner, and said, "We're out, dude." Charlene didn't move for a full 10 seconds. Then she walked off my lawn very deliberately, snapped a single photograph of my truck, and got into her white Escalade 2 driveways down. The Escalade idled in the street long enough for everyone to remember it had been there. When she pulled away, I noticed something on the back of the contractor's Ram. Under the AZ Compliance Solutions magnetic sign, peeking out from beneath the corner where the magnet had lifted, was the edge of older paint. White letters on tan. Whitaker Property Serve, partially obscured. I had Hattie zoom in. The footage caught it perfectly. In Arizona, an HOA cannot delegate enforcement to a company it secretly owns. That isn't enforcement, that's a fee mill. After the Escalade was gone, 2 curtains stopped twitching, and a door opened across the street. Mr. Holloway, retired plumber, 71, walked across the cul-de-sac in his slippers and stopped at the bottom of my driveway. He looked at the spot on the windshield where the decal had been. He looked at my daughter, sitting in the truck with her phone still up. He said, "Son, my wife and I have been waiting 4 years for somebody on this street to do what you just did. Whatever you need, knock." Then he walked back across the street, in his slippers, in the dust. That night, in the kitchen, I started a new folder. I labeled it LLC. The Arizona Corporation Commission is not a sexy website. It looks like it was built in 1998 and has been afraid to be updated ever since. But it is, line for line, one of the most powerful public records tools an ordinary citizen has. And that Friday morning at 6:14 a.m., with the coffee on and Hattie still asleep, it gave me everything. AZ Compliance Solutions LLC. Filed 2019. Registered agent, Brent J. Whitaker. Manager, Charlene M. Whitaker. Principal address, a P.O. box rented in the same strip mall where the HOA's professional management company was registered. The HOA's professional management company, when I pulled it, turned out to be a single-member LLC. Sole member, Charlene M. Whitaker. I sat at my kitchen table looking at the screen and felt something deeper than satisfaction. It was the steady quiet of a piece slotting exactly where you knew it would slot, but had refused to assume. For 4 years, Charlene Whitaker had been the architectural enforcer who handed out the violations, the management company that processed the fines, and the compliance contractor who slapped the orange stickers and collected the towing fees. She had built a closed loop where she wrote the rules, judged the rules, fined the rules, and pocketed the rules. The HOA had been paying her, through 3 different entities, for the privilege of being terrorized by her. I pulled the HOA's annual budget, filed with the Pima County Recorder per Arizona statute. 4 years of compliance and enforcement contractor services. $42,200, $46,800, $48,900, $51,300, $189,000 in 4 years to a contractor that did not exist anywhere except inside her own mailbox. I made a spreadsheet. Hattie woke up at 7 and made me a second cup of coffee without being asked. By 8, I had cross-referenced every violation issued by AZ Compliance Solutions LLC over 4 years. 241 violations. 193 of them issued against 31 households. 26 of those 31 households had at least one active duty service member living there. 14 were junior enlisted, E4 through E6. The remaining 5 were retirees on fixed incomes. The Tucson neighborhoods that surrounded Davis-Monthan were full of military families because that was the geometry of the city. But Saguaro Ridge wasn't on the perimeter. Saguaro Ridge had a smattering of military families, maybe 1 in 5 homes. To get a 200 violation list that landed 80% on military households, you had to be sorting on purpose. She had been picking on the kids on her husband's base. While riding around in a white Escalade, her husband's paycheck helped pay for. While her husband, somewhere on that base, signed off on facilities work for the very airmen she was bleeding. I looked at the spreadsheet for a long time. Then I closed my laptop with the kind of careful click you give a closing weapon. Hattie, behind me with a piece of toast, said, "Dad, what's the plan?" I turned around. I let her see me smile. I said, "We are going to give your mother's neighborhood back to the people who actually live in it." By Monday morning, the kitchen table looked like a war room, and Hattie had organized the exhibits in 3-ring binders, the way her mother used to organize tax receipts, chronological, color-coded, with a printed table of contents in the front. She was wearing one of my old Air Force PT shirts, and there was something in her shoulders I hadn't seen since before the funeral. Purpose. The thing teenagers will not pretend to have. You can only let them find it. I drove to the base in the F-250, still sticker-free, still unmoved from where it always lived. The 355th Wing Legal Office is a beige building with a flagpole, 2 pots of dying marigolds, and a captain named Reina Castellanos, who has the patience of a saint and the precision of a forensic accountant. I dropped a 4-inch binder on her desk, and she lifted the cover with 1 finger. "Sir," she said carefully, "this is a lot." "This is the easy part," I said. "Wait until you see what's coming." We spent 3 hours walking the documents. She made tabs. She made margin notes. She asked the questions JAG attorneys ask in the voice JAG attorneys use. Flat, surgical, and quietly delighted to find something this clean. By noon, she had drafted 3 letters. 1 to the HOA board on my behalf. 1 to the Arizona Department of Real Estate, which regulates community managers. 1 to the Office of the Attorney General, Consumer Protection Division. She looked up. "Sir, may I ask, is the management company member personally known to you?" "She's filed compliance violations against me for 2.5 weeks. Captain Castellanos let one corner of her mouth tilt. "I am going to enjoy this letter." By Tuesday afternoon, I was in the IG's office. The Inspector General is the quiet, terrifying part of any military command, the office that protects the troops from the command itself, and the command from itself. I laid out the evidence: selective enforcement, targeting of junior enlisted families, a spouse of a sitting commissioned officer running a fee mill against junior airmen, potential ethics violation if Major Whitaker had any knowledge of, or financial benefit from, his wife's operation. The IG, a colonel I'd known by reputation for 6 years, said the sentence you only ever want to hear from an IG: "We'll handle our side." By Wednesday, I was at Office of Special Investigations. They are the federal agents who wear khakis and never raise their voices. They took the spreadsheet. They took the LLC filings. They took the Facebook posts. They asked me one question: "Colonel, do you want this loud or quiet?" "I want her to hear it before the news does," I said. Major Whitaker deserves the chance to be the kind of officer who chose right. They nodded once. They left. By Thursday, I was at the Tucson Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit, sitting across from a detective named Roberto Vega, who had a coffee mug that said, "World's Okayest Dad," and a binder of his own that was already 4 inches thicker than mine. He had opened a file on AZ Compliance Solutions LLC 9 months ago, after a Saguaro Ridge widow complained about being towed off her own driveway. He had been waiting for somebody to bring him the rest. He looked up from my exhibits with the expression of a man who had just been handed Christmas. "Colonel," he said, "are you available Saturday week at 6 p.m.? "That's the HOA General Meeting," I said. "That's the HOA General Meeting," he agreed. By Friday morning, the neighbors had started knocking. Tech Sergeant Owens from 2 doors down, who had been fined $3,200 over 4 years for offenses that ranged from garden gnome inconsistent with community aesthetic to child's basketball hoop visible from street. Mrs. Renteria, a widow whose late husband had been the Chief Master Sergeant Padilla had mentioned, who had been towed twice in 18 months and lost both tires to improper attachment of the boom. Master Sergeant Cole, retired, who had been threatened with a special assessment so steep he'd nearly sold the home he'd lived in since 2007. Each of them gave Captain Castellanos a sworn statement. Each statement went into Hattie's binders, in chronological order, with a printed table of contents. KGUN9's investigative producer agreed to send a single camera to the meeting Saturday week. I stood in my garage Friday night, with the door rolled up and the desert cooling toward fall, looked at the 2 XR250s in their primer coats, and felt my hands stop trembling for the first time in 18 months. I had work to do. I had a job to take command of in 9 days, and I had one Karen to introduce to the actual size of her mistake. Hattie came out with 2 glasses of iced tea and sat on the workbench beside me without asking permission. She was wearing Mara's old denim jacket, the one with the patch from Aviano on the sleeve, and she had been wearing it for 3 days. She watched me set the torque wrench down on the bench. She said, very quietly, "Mom would be loving this." I did not answer her. I did not need to. I just put my arm around her shoulders, and we looked at the motorcycles together. And for the first time since the funeral, the silence between us was the good kind of silence, the kind that doesn't ask anything of you, the kind that just sits there and lets you breathe. It rained Sunday afternoon, which never happens in October in Tucson, which is how Hattie knew something was wrong. The desert smelled like wet rock and creosote. The driveway was darker than I'd ever seen it. I was on base at the change of command rehearsal, watching airmen run their formations in damp flight suits, when my phone buzzed 3 times in a row. Hattie, Hattie, Hattie. "Dad, they're here again. The tow truck. The orange shirt guys. She's with them. They have a flatbed." I told her to lock the door, stay in the house, push record on her phone, and not come out for any reason. She said okay in the voice she used to use when she was 9 and trying very hard to be brave. I left the rehearsal. I broke no laws on the drive home. I do not remember any of it. When I rolled into the cul-de-sac, my F250 was already hooked to a yellow flatbed and tilted at a sharp angle on its winch. A man in a tan polo shirt was holding the corner of my kayak, the kayak that had been stored, locked, in my garage, and dragging it across the concrete with the kind of grip that doesn't care what cracks. My side mirror was already on the ground. There was a long, fresh gouge in the paint above the wheel well from where the tow hooks had been forced. Charlene Whitaker was standing on my driveway in white capris and a denim jacket, supervising. She was filming on her phone. She turned and saw me. She said the sentence she would regret for the rest of her life. "Hi, neighbor. You can't park commercial vehicles in Saguaro Ridge. HOA voted." She tilted her head. "You're lucky my husband isn't here. He's a major in the Air Force. He knows people." I let her talk. I let her smile. I did not move. I did not raise my voice. I walked very calmly up the driveway, past her, past the contractor, past my own kayak in 2 pieces on the concrete, and into my garage, where a third man, somebody I had not seen before, was standing over my motorcycles with an open can of paint thinner in his right hand. The smell hit me like a slap. He had already poured a streak across the gas tank of the XR250 closest to the wall. He saw me. He froze. The can shook in his hand. "Out," I said. He went. I did not stop him. I did not need to. I walked back to the driveway in the rain. I looked at the contractor with the kayak. I looked at the man on the flatbed. I looked at Charlene Whitaker. I said, "Lower the truck, now." The flatbed driver, to his credit, was the first to understand who he was looking at. He killed the winch. He started reversing the boom. The F250 settled back onto its wheels with a slow hydraulic sigh, like an animal being allowed to lie down. Charlene started to talk. I looked at her one time, and she stopped. Hattie came out of the front door in bare feet, holding her phone at eye level, recording. She walked across the wet driveway, around the broken kayak, and stopped beside me. She did not say a word. I turned to Charlene. "You came onto my property uninvited," I said. "You damaged a registered vehicle. You damaged personal property inside a closed garage. You did so under color of authority you do not have. You did so on video. You did so with 2 witnesses, 3 contractors, and a teenager. And you did so 6 days before the annual meeting of the Saguaro Ridge Homeowners Association." Her smile flickered, then locked into place the way a smile locks when a face has run out of options. I said, "I would like you to leave my property now. We will see you Saturday." She left. The flatbed left. The orange shirt men left. The rain kept falling. Hattie lowered her phone. She looked at the kayak. She looked at the gouge in the F250. She looked at the puddle of paint thinner on the garage floor. Then, in a voice she had not used since she was 11, she said, "Dad, I want her to lose everything." I put my hand on the back of her neck the way Mara used to, when our kid needed steadying. "She will," I said. "She just doesn't know it yet." Brent Whitaker came to my front door on Wednesday at 6:42 p.m., in a wrinkled khaki shirt, no rank, no insignia, holding a manila folder with both hands, the way a kid holds a permission slip he hasn't been able to forge. Hattie saw him first through the side window, said "Dad," and then went upstairs without being asked. She knew the look of an officer who had come to confess something. She had grown up in our living room. I opened the door. He was 43, lean, blue-eyed, with the kind of haircut that says somebody on this base outranks me, and I respect that. He looked at the truck on my driveway. He looked at the kayak, taped together now in 3 places, leaned against the side of the garage. He looked at me. "Sir," he said, "Major Brent Whitaker, Civil Engineering Squadron. I would like to speak with you off the record before you take command on Friday." I let him in. He sat at my kitchen table with his hands held, as if he had a hat on his knee, and he laid the manila folder in front of me without opening it. "Sir," he said, 3 days ago my wife told me she had filed a compliance action against the new neighbor at 4218. Last night I saw the incoming commander photo packet circulated at our staff meeting. I recognized your name immediately, because she had said it twice over dinner. I want to be very clear, I did not know about the LLC. I knew she ran the architectural committee. I knew she did the management work. I did not know she owned the compliance contractor. I learned that 2 hours ago, when I opened her laptop without permission. He pushed the folder forward. That's a printout of her email account from the last 4 years. I will face whatever I have to face for accessing her account without consent. I have already informed my squadron commander. I am here to give you what I have. I did not open the folder. Not yet. Major, I said, why are you doing this? He looked at his hands. Because my father was an E4 in 1989, he said quietly. Because the families she was bleeding are the families I am supposed to serve. Because I took an oath. And because when my wife said the words, commercial vehicle, at dinner 3 nights ago, I should have asked the next question, and I didn't. And now a man under my command, under your command, sir, is going to have to read about it in the newspaper. I let that sit. Then I said, Major, I am not your judge. Your wife is not your fault. Your silence at the dinner table was your fault, and you've already walked it up the chain. You'll meet with IG. You'll meet with OSI. You will tell them everything. You will not retaliate against your wife in any form. You will not interfere with the meeting on Saturday. You will sit in the room and you will listen. Do you understand? Yes, sir. You are dismissed. He stood up. He paused at the door. He turned around. Sir, one more thing. She tried to bribe a Tucson code inspector this morning. She offered him $3,000 to backdate a waiver for your driveway. He said no. He recorded the call on his city-issued phone. It's already with PD. I looked at him. Major, get some sleep. You are going to need it. He left. The folder stayed on my table. I opened it after Hattie had gone to bed. The emails were exactly what I'd expected, and a little worse than I'd hoped. Charlene to her management LLC, instructing herself to issue fines. Charlene to herself at AZ Compliance, scheduling tows. Charlene to a board member, threatening to leak rumors about his ex-wife if he didn't vote yes on the special assessment. Charlene to a Facebook moderator, asking her to delete comments from the Hispanic mother on Mesquite who's making this whole thing political. I read every line. I made copies. I sent a copy to Captain Castellanos at 11:48 p.m. She replied at 11:49. Sir, we are going to have a very good Saturday. 2 streets over, in a master bathroom with marble counters, Brent's paycheck had not actually paid for. Charlene Whitaker was sitting on the closed lid of her toilet in her bathrobe, scrolling through her contractor's phone calls, her hands shaking, trying to call the man who had towed my truck and getting his voicemail 4 times in a row. She did not know what her husband had done. She did not know which laptop he had opened. She did not know what was in the manila folder. She only knew that the man at 4218 had spoken to her in a voice she had heard exactly once before in her life, 22 years earlier, from a state trooper at the side of a road she had not slowed down on. She did not sleep that night. She tried to delete a Facebook post at 3:14 a.m., and the internet, of course, had already saved it. Outside, the desert cooled. The garage smelled faintly of paint thinner and patience. The truck sat in the driveway, exactly where it had always sat. 3 days to the meeting. The Saguaro Ridge Clubhouse, on Saturday at 6 in the evening, looked the way HOA clubhouses always look at the start of a meeting, and nothing at all like the way they look at the end of one. Beige carpet, folding chairs, a pitcher of lemonade with floating mint, a long folding table at the front with a nameplate that read, Charlene Whitaker, Chair. The smell of grocery store cookies and air freshener that had been spraying every 15 minutes since 1997. 71 residents in the room. 17 of them were active-duty military families who had never come to a meeting before. Hattie had texted them all personally. She'd made a list. I came in at 3 minutes after the hour, in dress blues, ribbons squared, hat under my arm. Behind me walked Brigadier General Davis Owusu, my incoming wing commander superior, in dress blues of his own. Beside me walked my 14-year-old daughter, in a navy dress, with a binder under each arm. The room went quiet, the way a room only goes quiet when nobody has rehearsed it. Charlene Whitaker was already at the front, in a pink linen blazer, mid-sentence. She saw us. Her sentence stopped on the consonant. Good evening, I said. I'd like to invoke the residence privilege under Bylaw 4.2, 10 minutes of the floor. Detective Vega, 2 rows from the back, in a blue blazer with no badge showing, gave the smallest nod. Behind him, near the door, The KGUN9 producer had her camera on a low shoulder rig, recording. Charlene tried for a smile. "Mr. Marsh, the agenda is—" "Colonel," General Owusu said quietly. The room understood what he meant. I walked to the front. Hattie handed me the first binder. I did not raise my voice. I have never had to. 241 violations in 4 years, I said. 193 of them against 31 households. 26 of those households are active duty military. 14 are junior enlisted. Airmen first class, senior airmen, staff sergeants, the kids on your husband's base. 5 are retirees on fixed incomes. I held up a map of Saguaro Ridge with 31 red pins in it. These are the houses she chose. The room exhaled. I held up the second binder. AZ Compliance Solutions LLC, Form 2019, Registered Agent, Major Brent Whitaker, sitting 2 rows behind me. Brent did not flinch. Sole Manager, Charlene Whitaker. Saguaro Ridge Management Group, also a single-member LLC, also Charlene Whitaker. Across 4 years, this neighborhood paid $189,300 to the same person, through 3 doors. The treasurer, 2 seats from Charlene, slid his chair an inch sideways. I held up the third binder. On Sunday, agents acting on her instruction towed my registered, current, hobby-exempt vehicle from my own driveway. They damaged my side mirror, my paint, a kayak stored in my closed garage, and the gas tank of a personal restoration motorcycle. On Wednesday, she offered a Tucson code inspector $3,000 in cash to backdate a permit waiver. He recorded the call. Detective Vega in the back has the audio. Vega lifted the small recorder 1 inch. He set it back down. I turned and looked at the residents, not at Charlene, not yet, and I let them see me look at them. "You did not vote for any of this," I said. "You did not approve a closed loop. You did not approve a shell company. You did not approve targeted enforcement against the families of the airmen who serve 6 miles from this room. 41 of you have signed the recall petition I am about to file. The recall is valid under Bylaw 7.3.A. The vote was certified by Captain Reina Castellanos of the 355th Wing Legal Office and notarized by Pima County." I finally turned to her. "Charlene Whitaker," I said, "you are removed as chair of the Saguaro Ridge Architectural and Compliance Committee, effective immediately. Your management contract with this association is terminated. Your husband has resigned all secondary employment. Detective Vega would like to speak with you outside." She did not speak. The room rose to its feet in one slow wave. Nobody cheered. Nobody had to. The KGUN9 camera kept rolling. I leaned forward toward the microphone one final time. "I'm Colonel Ethan Marsh," I said. "I took command of the 355th Wing yesterday. From here on out, the airmen who live in this neighborhood will be treated like neighbors. The end." Then I picked up the binder, took Hattie's hand, and walked out. The story made the local news Sunday at 6. It made the Air Force Times by Wednesday. By the following Monday, it had been picked up by 3 national outlets and 1 podcast I had to ask Hattie to explain to me. The county attorney filed 11 counts against Charlene Whitaker by Friday. The Arizona Department of Real Estate suspended her management license that same afternoon. The federal fair housing complaint went into a slower lane, the way federal complaints do, but it did not go away. None of it ever did. The Saguaro Ridge Board met 3 Saturdays later. A new board, mostly first-time volunteers, including Tech Sergeant Owens, Mrs. Renteria, and a 31-year-old single mother named Danny Cruz, whose koi pond complaint had been one of the loose threads I'd pulled at the very beginning. The board unanimously voted to channel the court-ordered restitution from Charlene Whitaker, $187,000 plus statutory interest, into a permanent neighborhood fund. We named it the Saguaro Ridge Military Family Fund. For 10 years, it would cover HOA dues, pool fees, and assessment shortfalls for any junior enlisted household in the development. There was a unanimous second motion to retire the term compliance contractor from the bylaws, replace it with the words licensed third party, and require board approval, public notice, and a state-issued bond number before any vehicle on any driveway in Saguaro Ridge was ever again touched by anybody who did not own it. Captain Castellanos drafted the new bylaws on a Sunday afternoon in pencil and finished them by dinner. Hattie made the cover page. The Whitaker house went on the market in November. The for sale sign sat at the corner of their lawn through the holidays, then through the spring. Brent Whitaker accepted a separation from service in good standing. He moved to Ohio to be near his father, who had once been an E4. He sent me a single Christmas card. It said, "Thank you for letting me choose." I keep it in my desk drawer. The first family to apply for the new Saguaro Ridge Military Family Fund was Tech Sergeant Owens, the same neighbor Charlene had fined $3,200 for the crime of owning a basketball hoop. The board paid his back dues out of restitution and walked him through the application like he was the first person in line, because he was. The second family was a young senior airman who had moved in 3 months earlier and had been quietly terrified of every HOA newsletter that hit her mailbox. She came to the December workshop on a Saturday morning with her 6-year-old and a tray of homemade tamales, and she stayed. The garage door rolled up the first Saturday of December at 9 a.m. and stayed open most weekends after that. We called it Mara's Garage. The two XR250s, the one with the paint thinner scar still visible on its tank, kept on purpose, sit in the corner. The rest of the floor is workbenches. 5 teenagers come most Saturdays. Tech Sergeant Owens' son is one. Danny Cruz's daughter is another. They learn to bleed brake lines and torque a head bolt and respect a torque wrench more than they respect any adult in the room. Hattie runs the sign-in clipboard. She speaks in full sentences now. Sometimes she speaks in paragraphs. I still drive the F250. The side mirror has been replaced. The gouge on the wheel well has been buffed, but not painted, because Hattie said, and she was right, that some scars are receipts. The kayak is on the wall of the garage, with the crack still visible. It is no longer a boat. It is a reminder of what a neighborhood looks like the morning before it remembers what it is. If you've ever had an HOA Karen come for your truck, your flag, your fence, or your kid, comment below with your state and the one rule she invented out of thin air. I want to read every one. And if you want more stories of small-town power running headfirst into the wrong neighbor, hit subscribe, because next week we are heading to a Tennessee subdivision where an HOA president decided a retired arson investigator's burn barrel was the hill she wanted to die on. She picked the wrong hill.
What Charlene Whitaker did not understand, and what most petty tyrants have never understand, is that real authority almost never looks like a pink blazer and a clipboard. It looks like a Ford F-250 that stayed parked in the same spot for 2.5 weeks, while the man behind it quietly pulls every public record, every LLC filing, every Facebook screenshot, and every meeting minutiae the state of Arizona will release for the $11 at the county recorder's window. She thought volume was power. She thought paper was. Paper wins. It always wins. Because paper does not get angry and paper does not need to raise its voice. If you ever find yourself on the wrong end of an HOA Karen, even charming one, even a church-going one, even one married to someone important, write text, every email, every ring clip, the documented truth will save you, your truck, your neighborhood, and the people next door who didn't know they were waiting for somebody to go first. If the story hit home, drop your own HOA nightmare in the comments. Hit your state, the one rule she invented out of thin air. Subscribe for next week's a Tennessee fire investigator and a burn barrel war that ended a 12-year HOA reign. See you on the next one.
Drop the trailer right there. He's